we cover courage.
Yeah, hello there and welcome along to the first edition of Allianz League's Press Pack. Over the next 9 weeks or so, we'll be discussing what's on the back and the front pages in the hands of some of the best writers in the industry. Joining me tonight is Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times and John Fogarty of the Irish Examiner. You're both very welcome along, lads.
Cheers, Damian.
Great to see you. Malachy, I suppose the first item in our discussion tonight, David Clifford. Team captain of Kerry, 21 years of age, destined for stardom almost since he was 14 years of age. An out-and-out prodigy of the game. But just before we get into David's career and his progression, what, in your opinion, marks out a prodigy in sport?
I don't know. You know, it's got to be talent is the main thing, opportunity, and then a bit of luck. I guess they all sort of roll into each other. If you take, you know, the prodigies that we think of, think of the guys that you hear of before you see them. That's who they are. You know, it doesn't even matter the sport. You know, I remember a 442 magazine years ago with Ronaldinho on the front, and Ronaldinho was the best player in the world. And there was a picture of him with a kid called Messi standing beside him. And basically the front cover said, "You think I'm good? Where do you see this kid?" And Messi hadn't even, I don't know if he'd even played for Barcelona yet. And so that's who it is. That's what a prodigy is. You hear about them before you see them. And then you wait. You kind of watch them and you go, all right, kid, show me. And the cool thing about them is then when they do show you.
John, they're also known sometimes by one name. You've the Gooch, Joe, as in Joe Canning's case, Rory, as in the golf, Tiger. You hear about them, as Malachy says, a long time out. And you wait and you watch. You're very rarely surprised. These guys are born winners, but why and how can they sustain that level throughout their careers so early to get into the game?
It's a good question, Damian. David Clifford will be David Clifford, though. You know, I think it will be David Clifford. I can't see him being...
They won't be calling him Cliff.
Cliff.
I don't think so.
From Cheers.
We know a few Cliffs, all right, but there's only one. But as Malachy said, we've been hearing about this guy for a long time. I've seen him putting bums on seats, Damian, for a hell of a long time, and that's what prodigies do. Sergio Garcia would have been one in golf as well. There would have been a lot of talk of him. I remember seeing him at the Irish Open and winning in his first Irish Open. I think he just turned from amateur and won in Druids Glen. It's a case of, with these guys, you want to see them in the flesh. Mick O'Connell, people wanted to see Mick O'Connell in the flesh. People want to see David Clifford in the flesh. There were definitely traffic. There was definitely traffic jams before a couple of Munster finals in the mid-2000s because of the minor game, because people wanted to see that man behind you there. David Clifford is box office in many ways, and prodigies, yeah, we've had a few, and you mentioned a couple there, but I don't think we've seen anything like this. A two-time All-Star after 2 seasons. His goal last weekend, obviously, and then what he did against Monaghan. Malachy's Monaghan, up in Clones, denying them that victory, and it would have been a deserved victory. But he's doing things what prodigies do. He's doing things that seem superhuman.
You're right, he is. 1068 in 12 games in his last year as a minor, 4-4 in the All-Ireland final against Derry. All the AFL clubs interested in him. Nobody actually makes contact, but it's written that he can go down there and be star two, potentially, if he'd like to be. He commits to Kerry without even having kicked the ball at adult level, and there's a celebration down there. It's an enormous fanfare for a guy who has not yet worn the green and gold at senior level, Mal, and it's an extraordinary development.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but you've got to put it in the context. I remember when Colm Cooper came through, and the only reason I hadn't heard of him as a minor, apparently I went back and checked afterwards. He had been a brilliant minor, and there was a brilliant minor final against Dublin, I think, or a minor semi-final against Dublin. His last year as a minor. But I had cousins in Kerry who were telling me about this kid, and you know, you got to see them. And but the team that he came on to was about to go on to be, like, it had just won an All-Ireland 2 years earlier, or a couple of years earlier, and was about to go on to be one of the great Kerry teams. He was surrounded by fantastic talent all the way through. The context with Clifford, is a bit different. You know, they've won one All-Ireland. Kerry have won one All-Ireland in the last 10 years. They're starving for a saviour. They need him. It reminds me a little of like the Kerry comparison. I saw a great piece in the Examiner a while ago. Their great lineage of number 13s, from Mikey to Gooch.
Did you write that, George?
I certainly didn't.
Mikey to Gooch to Clifford, and it's a great sort of legacy to carry on. But the context here is he's almost more like when Maurice Fitz. Maurice Fitz, he's the first Kerry player. I'm pretty sure I have this stat right. He's the first Kerry player since Maurice Fitz to have 2 All-Stars before he has an All-Ireland medal.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, so he is this. You know, they're holding on to him. They need an All-Ireland, and he is the figurehead.
They had lost Mark O'Connor as well. Mark O'Connor, a huge loss.
Captain of those teams.
Yeah, the far Lloydger, and that's the concern. It still is a concern. Like David Moore, and obviously will come back later in the year for them. But there's a couple of guys who they've lost, and you know, Kildare obviously in the last couple of years have lost Australian rules players, but Kerry and most, and you know that there are knocks on the door at the house just outside Killarney there, the Clifford household. But he turned it down. He was born to play for the county and born to excel in it. Obviously, in many ways, the captaincy, a lot of lonely eyes look towards David Clifford and have done over the last couple of seasons, and now even more so that he has the captaincy.
Where do you stand on that? 21 years of age.
Yeah, I don't think he needed it. That's not to say that he's not capable. Don't think he needed it. He's a man who's leading by action. I spoke to a few captains about this last week. Tommy Doyle, who would have led Kerry to the 84 title, you know, he was making the point, I was in my late 20s when I got this. It's just, you look at the last couple of years, Damian, and the captaincy, players have struggled with it now. Mind you, they haven't been. No, they weren't as established.
You know, that's the difference.
There's no denying that, absolutely. But
and it was the difference. Like even Jackie Turrell wrote about it in his book about being Kilkenny captain the year he got it, and he got it so young, and you know, kind of felt, God, imposter syndrome. You know, felt he did. You know, Clifford isn't that. Yeah, but that's not a thing.
I wonder Malachy, what's going on around it though, because he was wearing number 14 at the weekend, and we all know the number 13 Pishog. I know, and listen, we might smile about it here in Dublin, but it's a big thing in Kerry and parts of Kerry.
Explain that then to our viewers.
Pishog is obviously his curse,
superstition.
Yeah, the late great Paddy O'Shea would have been a big man for if he saw a red-haired woman on the day of a final or a game, he was perturbed to say the least. But the Pishog is that no number 13 has walked up the steps of the Hogan stand and claimed the Sam Maguire Cup. So you saw it with Colin Cooper. He was captain twice, Damien, and both times, certainly the second time anyway, he was given the number 11 jersey, and already we're seeing that David Clifford is giving the number 14. Again, I think we jest about it, lads, but these things are big down there.
The thing with Kerry is that they have a bigger problem than the number 13 jersey. They have Dublin, you know, like that's their thing. And like this, I think, is where we need to be a wee bit careful talking about Clifford. My podcast partner in the Irish Times, Pat Nugent, had a great line about Clifford, listening to the talk of him over the weekend. He said it's nearly, the tone of voice people use is that it's nearly nostalgia for something that is happening in front of our eyes. Like people are talking about Clifford in these kind of faraway tones. Clifford's played 8 games in Croke Park as a Kerry senior and won 1. They have no All-Ireland. They are still a fair bit off Dublin, we think. You know, like, fair enough, it was a great game.
Go back to Saturday night, Val. I mean, were you impressed with his composure?
Yeah. He is fantastic.
2 feet.
He is a monumental footballer. His technique is his own. Like, there's very few footballers that you can tell, like, take the jerseys off them, close your eyes. That technique, he holds the ball so far out in front of himself. He has such long levers. He makes such big use of his body. He's a phenomenal footballer.
He almost lost the ball on the way to that goal as well, Damien. And you know, obviously he favours the left side. And you know, have we ever seen, since Pat Spillane, have we ever seen somebody with a high finish like that? That technique in terms of finishing. And this is the other thing as well, Damien, that we're looking at here. This man can mix it.
Oh, he's
used to a couple of years ago.
His brass. There's no,
You know, this guy is no shrinking violet in any shape or form.
Off him, and he didn't bat.
Yeah, but those the pictures that you're looking at there, you know, and John Small grabs his jersey at the end here. You know, that's I wouldn't. My read of that wouldn't be that he was picked on by the Dublin players.
Yeah.
Clifford is plenty bowed enough. I'm sure he had plenty to say all the way through that game.
What did you make then of the Dean Rock handshake? Was that a mark of respect? Or was it?
I don't know. Yeah, I thought it was initially, and then I was thinking, do you know what? It's a league game. It's January.
Stop.
You know. Well done, Boyo, in January, but I can do that. I can do this in September and August.
No.
Dean Rock's a good man.
He's a gentleman.
On the field, it's a different story, man.
If it was some of the other pups in the Dublin team, I'd be a bit more suspicious.
Well, it was so funny that
Dean is a good man.
I don't think it was patronised. I don't think you can patronise David Clifford, but you made the point that he hasn't won an All-Ireland title. It was a big thing for James O'Donoghue. He won an All-Star and he won Player of the Year, obviously, when they won the All-Ireland in 2014. But it was a big deal for him that he had an All-Star before he won an All-Ireland.
Yeah. Have you guys interviewed him? I have after matches, and doesn't take a funk out of him, in my opinion. But have you guys had a chance to sit down with him?
No.
Clifford.
No, you might have on the All-Stars.
On the All-Stars trip, yeah. And that's the great thing about the All-Stars trip, is an opportunity to try and break down anything like that. But this man, I don't think he's media trained. I just think he's cute out. I think he's learned from.
And he's young.
Yeah.
Like, interviewing young players is, with the very, very rare exception, they've nothing to say yet.
We may get used to it, Mel.
This man likes a bit of darts. He likes Celtic. That's his team and things like that. You're absolutely right, Malachy. That's what you get out of him. But there is behind that, there's a steeliness. Like, there's a video. I'm sure it's still up there on social media of him coming down the tunnel at half-time. I think it was in the drawn game last year against Dublin, and him busting his fist against the wall. He was that frustrated.
East Kerry and Dingle last year played. He was targeted there. He's targeted every single game. What sort of mentality do you need to blot all that out, day in, day out, know that they're going to come and try and rattle you, and get on with your game?
Well, what does Cannon say? You've got to take it as the compliment it is and shove it right back at them. You've got to just... that's the game. That's the... you are that good. They're not targeting the bad players. That's got to be it.
Which talented player these days doesn't know how to look after himself?
Yeah.
There might have been a couple of players we would have seen at under 20 level and minor level saying they're lovely. You know what I mean? But you need that hard shell as soon as you get to see them.
In development squads since 16. There's actually one photograph there I saw at the end of the match on Saturday whereby the jersey was pulled off him, but I saw his collarbone.
That's the first time I'd seen that.
Wrapped very tightly. And you mentioned the fact, Mal, that Pat Nugent, our colleague, mentioned about the nostalgia in front of our eyes. We have to be careful here. He's a young guy. James O'Donoghue's been ravaged with injuries. We can't hype this guy up too much, knowing that it could all suffer.
And even beyond injuries, along with the fact that they are, at best, the second best team in the country, and there's a historically good team ahead of them. If we want to make a comparison to a modern GA player, it's Joe Canning. He is fantastic, but we all presume that Kerry will win these brilliant young Kerry lads will win an All-Ireland this year, next year. We presume it's coming. Might not be.
We presume
it could be 7 or 8 years away.
Joe
had to wait till he was 29.
I think it was 11
Minor,
years.
Sigerson. He's been there. He wasn't allowed to play under 20. He probably would have had one there that probably would have fancied the chances of winning the one to Kildare one had he been available. And yet, for the first few games that he played, everybody was talking about Shawnee at number 11, more so than Clifford, momentarily.
Well, to a certain extent. I think Sean O'Shea, I think he was delighted to have David Clifford, and will be for most of his life delighted to have David Clifford around. Because he's such a phenomenal player himself. Imagine Clifford wasn't there, imagine the fuss everybody would have to be making out of Sean O'Shea.
The standards he's setting himself are extraordinary, and it's scary because he's going to be judged by them.
We could have this conversation later in the season, but great stuff for now, lads. And coming up in just a few moments' time, we'll be talking about the new rules and what effect they had on the opening weekend, so stay with us. Yeah, you're very welcome back to Allianz League Press Pack. In part one, we had a right good chat about David Clifford and his emergence and progression. But now, GA rules. It's not for everybody, but we're going to have a good discussion on it. We're going to bring it in from everywhere. John, I'm going to start with you. In general, do we mess about with the rules of our games too much in this stage, Gaelic football in this case?
Well, I've been guilty of calling for rule changes in the past to try and improve things, Damon. So, I would say that definitely we were a bit too hasty. We also have to remember that these changes that were brought in at Special Congress in October were done so in a league when not many people cared about them, you know. Jim Gavin certainly didn't do any work with the guys as much as Dean Rock picked off a couple of marks here and there. Didn't really care about it. Also as well, they were premised on a game that hadn't evolved as much as it did last year. Like, I think we can all agree that the football championship probably trumped the hurling championship last year, and how, just its quality and the entertainment provided.
That's a very interesting point. I'm going to stop you there. Were these rules brought in to solve a problem that was no longer there?
I think so, yeah. I think the game had evolved in many ways, obviously with the kick-out mark. I think the kick-out mark now is a full rule with the 20 metre, because obviously players they can kick out further, or there's more pressure to kick out further. But in terms of the advanced mark, I think we're aping in Australian rules, and it's a real concern for a lot of teams. You know, you're seeing the likes of Tomás O'Shea coming out about it, and they have, you know, philosophical differences with it. I would have it as well, but obviously there's the implementation of it as well. The referees, we were brought in last week to speak to the referees, administrators, and my heart goes out to them because they are
so hard to police.
It's like trying to shoot a moving target for them at the moment, because this thing is, you know, we might have had a soft launch to it this weekend, but as far as I can see, the players were given as much, they were given as much leeway, as much latitude to the referees as the referees were to the players.
That's an interesting perception. The advance mark, the kick-out rule, the sin bin, two-tier championship, they were all passed in a special Congress, and resounding vote for the Tier 2 championship, Mal, but just your own early impressions of the whole thing.
Yeah, they're interesting. I mean, you make a key point there, which is a broader point about GA decision-making, you know, the glacial speed at which things are done. By the time these rules were trialled, put through one Congress, put through a second Congress, 18 months had passed and the game had moved on. Game had outgrown
Teams
them.
were starting to counter-attack.
Now, and interesting, your point is exactly right. The implementation, especially of the mark rule. I remember in the at the start of the league last year, I chatted to a few people who had been involved in college games where these rules had been trialled in the off-season. And especially and a couple of referees, and they were going, we were refereeing these games on floodlit pitches at night, and like we couldn't see where the 13 is. You know, where the 13-metre line, because the original mark was inside the 13 or inside the 20, we'll say. And honestly, you know, if you are going to have a mark rule, the idea of having it inside the 20 is actually probably is probably not a bad one. But it's unimplementable.
Yes, you can't police it.
You know, unless, you know, you would need them to draw to make the 20-metre line a metre thick, something like that. You'd need it to be easily seen on the eye. Now, because if a player had to kick a ball from outside the 45 and the mark could only be taken inside the 20, well, then the problems with the Michael Murphy one that we saw on the weekend, you know, the little kick pass into the chest, that would go straight away because it would be a longer one. And also, you would, you know, if you could make it so that the referee could see that line and could be sure of it, then maybe that's an elegant way around it. But
the Michael Murphy one brought in huge amounts of this. That's just a catch. Like he ambled out at his leisure, stopped, takes 4 steps back, looks at the post and just puts it over at his ease.
He's been doing
Took
that.
17 seconds as well. I counted it back.
17
you know, Coldrick should have blown him up.
Not like a Monaghan man. Put it on the ball, man.
So was it for this that
for what died?
Yeah.
No, Michael has been doing that for 10 years in international rules, Damian. Conor McManus has been doing it, and we're going to see Conor McManus was another mark scorer at the weekend. We're going to see the international guys. It's made for them. They're winning cheap ball, with the greatest respect, cheap ball, because obviously all you need to do is steal a march on your defender and come out and catch a ball.
Now, to be devil's advocate with it, like obviously that there, you're looking at it and you're going, really, is that worthy of a score? But you know, the broader aim of it was to encourage kicking, which I think we're seeing. You know, at Dublin Kerry the other night, there was you know, there was a lot of kicking into the full forward line. Whether that's aimed at getting marks or whether it is, you know, this is what we want to do. Like Kerry had Tommy Walsh up there, and you know, let's try and get it into him. Now, so if the net result is the aim of the rule is to encourage kicking, to encourage more fights for possession, which is what the rule was essentially aimed at, this is the unintended consequence of it.
Yeah, but we want to see more free takers. That's the concern about it. We're going to see more guys taking free shots, and should a catch be the equivalent of being fouled? That's really the reward for it. I don't think it should be. And obviously, there's the 4 steps, the 15 seconds. Why it takes 15 seconds? Or in Michael's case, 17. But why 15 seconds when it was 5 seconds last year? Things have changed so much, too much.
They've changed a lot as well. For a while last year, he made Colin McShane into a world beater and set him up lovely for an All-Star later in the summer. It worked great for himself and Matty Donnelly. But there's a point in that too. Are we almost aping the AFL with this rule?
The irony is that Mickey Hart, who has never made any secret of his opposition to the international rules, may have put Colin McShane in the shop window by putting him at the edge of the square. He might obviously he was working for, it was inadvertent, but he was working for his own ends. But putting McShane there, as far as I can see, because McShane obviously we don't know what he's going to do now over the next while. But when you put somebody at the age of 24 doesn't go down to Australia, you go down at the age of 20, 19, 18 even. I think last year was frightening in a way for the GA, because if this, obviously we know the ties, they're cousins. The Australian rules and Gaelic football are cousins, but we're closely looking like brothers the way things are going.
People make the point then that if you scrap the back pass in general, that will flavour up the game and make it more fluid.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that one. I'm not sure. I know it was, I think that idea came from Stephen O'Mara, who's the DIT coach. I know the...
You're not convinced?
I mean, I understand the point of it, especially in a sin bin world, which we can get on to. As soon as there was a black card the other night, Evan Comerford came into his own, because Dublin started playing the ball around, playing the ball back to him, and I understand that, but I don't know if are you then taking out? I saw Rory Beggan make a run up the sideline for Monaghan the other day and put a fine ball into Kieran Hughes in the full forward position. Rory Beggan's one of the best strikers of the ball that Monaghan have. Are you taking that aspect of the game away? So
going back to the sin bin, what do you make of that, John? Pat Daly tried to bring it in about 22 years ago. It lasted about 3 weeks, but it's going to get a good run this time.
It is, and long may it stay. I know Malachy might have different opinions on this, which he'll tell you about shortly. But I wrote about this for the Examiner yesterday, Damien. I think it's bringing the subs back from 6 to 5. It takes away from the stronger teams, first of all. And number two, cynical play now. You're losing a player, so you're not being able to replace like for like. So Dublin, Kerry, Mayo, Tyrone, these teams cannot bring out. They obviously have the strongest squads, but now, do you know what? Not that the playing ground has been levelled in any shape or form, but there has been a little bit of a nod to the development.
I mean, that's a very fair point, and it's very reasonable, and it is a boost. I think it is a levelling of the playing pitch to a certain extent. I just have the problem with. I think it's a lesser punishment than what was there. And oh God, yeah, for the player.
Oh yeah.
Human beings are selfish individuals. We think of ourselves first and foremost. And the punishment of missing the rest of the game is far greater than sitting down for 10 minutes. And so in the split second you have to decide whether to pull that runner as he's just gone past you, then if you know that you're going to be sitting in the stand for the rest of the day, that body check, that third man tackle, that went out of the game. For all the people, for all the pundits have given out about black cards, and pundits are ex-players who understand how hard it is to sit out the rest of a game. For us watching on, it removed something that was a blight on the game. The black card worked in that way.
Yeah.
And I really think
we changed again.
I think it's gone back. I think it's a cynic's charter. I think it goes back, and it gives a player a bit more leeway. Okay, we can sit this out for 10 minutes. We can hang tight. We have our strategies. We'll waste a bit of time with injuries. We'll play keep ball. We'll do all that.
Now. That's what
last answer to you, John.
Yeah.
just in terms of this year, they're going to see through until the end of the championship anyway.
Yeah.
Can you see the rules lasting beyond that?
Well, Special Congress now looks like it's going to be in September, but that is to do with the football championships, the 3 proposals for the football championship. So, there could be a derogation of rule regarding the advance. I think the sin bin is going to stick around.
I think it probably will, I think it will, because I think it's popular with players, it's popular with managers, all that sort of stuff.
The administration of a club level is going to be difficult for the referees, because it's the referees who have the responsibility for the time. But in terms of the advance mark, the way things are going, we could see something happen maybe after the league, before the championship.
Interesting stuff, guys. Well, there's plenty more coming up on Air Sport. Live Allianz League coverage this weekend in the Allianz Football League. Mayo meet Dublin in Castlebar for the first time in 2020. That's on Saturday night. And our coverage gets underway from 6 p.m. on Air Sport 1 with Messrs Joe Brolly and Mark O'Shea. Meanwhile, across the way on Air Sport 2 in the Allianz Hurling League, All-Ireland champions Tipperary travelled down south to Páirc Uí Chaoimh to face Cork. We start our build-up from 6:30 p.m. But right now, my thanks to Malachy and John for their insight tonight. Thanks very much, guys. Press Back will be back at the same time next week to discuss all the latest happenings in the world of GEA. From us all here, good night.